For over 60 years, the global oil refining industry has been controlled by a handful of powerful nations: the United States, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and the Netherlands. Names like Shell, ExxonMobil, Valero, and Aramco didn't just refine oil, they control the price of everything. But something shifted in Africa quietly and deliberately. In 2024, the Rotterdam Refinery, Europe's largest, began losing West African contracts it has held for decades. US gasoline exporters watched their biggest market start to disappear. Shell had already sold its Nigerian downstream operation. Total Energy began quietly repositioning. Behind every one of these moves is one refinery, one man, and one bet that almost nobody in the West took seriously. Dangote Refinery, 650,000 barrels per day. The single largest crude oil refinery on the planet. The mistake most people make is to think that this is just an African story, a local refinery solving a local fuel shortage. It is not. This is a direct attack on a 60-year-old global supply chain, one where Africa exported its crude oil cheap, paid to have it refined abroad, then brought it back at full price. That system generated billions for Western energy companies every single year. How did one man build something this threatening? Aliko Dangote was born in Kano, northern Nigeria, in 1957. He started trading commodities, cement, sugar, with a loan of roughly $3,000 from his uncle. By the 1990s, he understood one thing better than every other African businessman. Africa's real problem was not lack of resources, it was lack of processing power. Nigeria sits on 37 billion barrels of proven crude oil reserve, the largest in Africa. And yet, for decades, it imported nearly 90% of its refined petroleum. The country was exporting raw crude at $80 a barrel and buying back petrol, diesel, and jet fuel at massive markup. Dangote decided that was going to end. He made 3 key decisions that changed everything. First, he chose scale over caution. Most refineries are built in phases. Dangote built the entire 650,000 barrel per day capacity in one go. The logic was brutal. Go big enough that the economics becomes unbeatable, or don't bother at all. Second, he built a refinery designed to process Nigerian crude specifically. This sounds obvious. It wasn't. Nigeria's Bonilite crude had for decades been sent to refineries in Europe and America, not fully optimized for it. Dangote engineered its plants from the ground up, around the crude sitting right beneath Nigerian soil. Third, he integrated everything: petrochemicals, fertilizer, pipelines, jet fuel, a 435-kilometer pipeline connecting directly to the oil fields. He didn't just build a refinery, he built a vertical integrated energy ecosystem that doesn't need to ask anyone for anything. In 2024, the Dangote Refinery began supplying petrol to Nigerian markets, ending a fuel import dependency that had lasted generations. West African neighbors, Ghana, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, started looking to Lagos instead of Rotterdam. US petroleum exporters, who had captured the West African markets worth an estimated $12 billion annually, began sounding alarms in Washington. Industry analysts at S&P Global warned that Dangote could displace up to 40% of gasoline imports into sub-Saharan Africa within 5 years. That is not a local story. That is a geopolitical shift. However, this isn't the full story. The refinery cost an estimated of $20 billion to build, making it one of the most expensive private infrastructures in history. A significant portion of that financing came through Nigerian National Petroleum Company and Chinese construction firm who built much of the facilities. Critics ask, is this a private triumph or a state-backed project wearing a private face. There are also operational cracks. In early 2024, a very public dispute erupted between Dangote and NNPCL over crude oil supply and pricing. Dangote accused Nigerian oil traders and international measures of sabotaging his access to local crude, forcing him to import from the US to keep the refinery running. His own refinery in Nigeria importing American crude. The irony is almost too perfect. Quality and delivery consistency remain under scrutiny. The refinery has faced questions whether it can sustain nameplate capacity long term, or whether the 650,000 barrel figure is more aspiration than operation. The refinery sits at the center of the Nigerian elite power struggle between oil marketers, government officials, and multinational energy companies, all with billions of dollars at stake, and none of them willing to lose quietly. Whether Dangote becomes the Aramco of sub-Saharan Africa or gets strangled by the very system it's destructing, one thing is already true. For the first time in 60 years, a refinery on African soil is making global energy traders nervous. And that playbook, take your raw resources, process it yourself, cut out the middleman, and keep the margin at home, is being watched carefully by governments across Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. The old oil order assumed the global south would always be mine, never the factory. Dangote just challenged the assumption with 650,000 barrels per day. The real question isn't whether Nigeria wins this fight. The real question is what happens when a dozen more African countries try the same.